ke aui ku ia kakala e o malama lami malama o ke o makali kapo o ka vale vale o kumu honua ia o ke kumu o ka lipo lipo o ke kumu o ka po lipo o ka lipo lipo ka lipo lipo ka lipo ka lao ka lipo ka po o vale o I hanau ka po hanau kulipo I ka po e kane hanau po LEI ka po e wahine. At the time when the earth became hot, at the time when the heavens turned about, the time when the sun was darkened to cause the moon to shine, the rise of the Pleiades, the slime. This was the source of the earth. From the source was formed darkness, and from the source was formed night. Darkness so deep, darkness of day, darkness of night. Night alone. Night alone did give birth. And born in the night was Kumulipo, the male. Born in the night was LEI, the female. These are the first 14 lines of one of our ancient hymns of creation. This one very meaningful today because it belongs to the family of Queen Liliuokalani. And in its entirety, it is over 2,100 lines long. In the days of our ancestors, chanted from memory. The last time that this was performed was during a birthday of King Klakaua here on the grounds of Iolani Palace. And the king, when he became king, had taken the job of taking the genealogy which stopped in about 1820 when the missionaries came, and adding to it, and adding the stories and such that brought it down into his generation and Princess Kaiulani's generation in the 1870s. And so here we have this chant that not only talks about a family's belief in how the universe started, because it sounds like in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. It's the same kind of thing. But this chant not only talks about that, it talks about the Hawaiian belief that we as Hawaiians come from the ocean. The single cell piece of coral, like that single cell amoeba of Darwin's theory, starts all of creation as Hawaiians believe in the ocean. And as it goes on, it starts to put together things that have come out of the ocean with things that are on land. And so we have many, many things that have the same names, and if we wonder why, that's it. We have the vaiaiole, in fact, limu, or seaweed, and what do we have? The fern as well. And so we have that coming together. In this genealogy, or in this chant, it also talks about the genealogy of a family. And this is the Kalakaua family. In her lifetime, the queen, after her brother had taken it and brought it down into their modern times in the 1870s, she added to it by doing the first translation in English. And so we have what's known today as the Kumulipo, or the chant or hymn of creation. Now the most wonderful thing to come out of this is the fact that today in modern times, our people, our children in fact, have taken it and put it to song. And so you hear it now and again. It's only been so far on a record in the beginning of or to introduce another song that's on an album. But if you listen, you'll recognize it. O before that whole prologue, it continues. Now, what's really interesting about this is that when it was chanted for the first time during Kalakawa's birthday, after it had been brought down into their time, no one alive then had the retentive powers to be able to memorize the whole chant. And so they say that there were 6 kahuna who came together to chant the chant. And one of the things they did, because they needed help to remember, was to get a ball of twine and tie little knots and other tiny little things in it, so that as they were chanting, they could untwine it and make sure that they, like, okay, so that they would remember. Now, history goes on to tell us that this group during that day, the 1800s, was known as the Ball and Twine Society. And today, you and I know them as that very secret society that still are the keepers of the genealogies and other ancient knowledge. They are called Halinawa, the Order of Halinawa. And so here we have all of this still here, and isn't it wonderful that it's taking the step forward in the way of coming into modern times, so that our youth are actually taking it and learning about it also.
I'm just going to give a little background to the reenactment that you're about to take part in. Our beloved Mo'ibahine Lili'uo Kalani often described her life as lonely, especially after the overthrow in 1893. But it is also true that there were many people that loved her and supported her. And after the overthrow, a group was formed called the Hui Aloha Aina o Navahine. The president was Mrs. Abigail Kuaiheleni Maipinipine Campbell. Her closest associate in that group was Mrs. Emma Navahi. There were branches of this hui on all of the major islands, and in March of 1893, just 2 months after the overthrow, they claimed to have 11,000 women as members of that group. They were organized women. And they engaged in direct political action also. They weren't just having tea and cookies. Mrs. Navahi's husband, of course, was Joseph Navahi, as Lynette said. And together, Joseph and Emma Navahi established and ran the newspaper called Kealoha Aina. And after Joseph Navahi died as a result of the tragic events of 1895, Mrs. Navahi kept the newspaper going for quite some time. When this story was published in the San Francisco Call, Hawaiian language version appeared also in the Kealoha Aina newspaper, translated by the staff of the Kealoha Aina newspaper at that time. And there's a display of the Hawaiian language newspaper out there also. So the Hawaiian that you are about to hear in the play is not Hawaiian that we wrote, but it's what they wrote. In March of 1893, President Grover Cleveland was not happy with the events that had happened in January, and he sent a Commissioner, James Blount, to Hawaii to investigate. And the women of the Hui Aloha Aina prepared a document of protest of the impending annexation to James Blount, and they delivered it to him, and it does appear in the Blount report. The photo that was in the Honolulu Weekly, and the only photo that we have of the executive committee of the Hui, was taken at that time. In 1894, when the provisional government shamelessly transformed themselves into an entity called the Republic of Hawaii, which, as we know, was a republic without a citizenship, the women's Hui drafted letters of protest and sent those letters of protest to 7 different nations with which Hawaii held treaties at that time. And then after the tragic events of 1895 and 1896, which included the death of Joseph Navaji, and the imprisonment of Kelii Aimoku. The Queen felt that she had to get away when she was released. She wrote that as the ship steamed out of the harbor, quote, "For the first time in years I drew a long breath of freedom. For what was there worthy of that sacred name under the circumstances in which I had lived on shore?" She went to Boston, New York, and Washington, D.C., and she did not return until the annexation in August of 1898. But while she was in the U.S., she was in constant contact with her people. In the Maka'ainana newspaper and in the Kealoha'aina newspaper, there were reports on her health and a letter from her or her secretary every single week. When the Treaty of Annexation was proposed in 1897, the planning for the gathering of the petitions and the trip to Washington took place in conjunction with the Queen through letters. And when the when the delegation took the petitions up to Washington, the very first thing that they did was meet with the Queen and form a committee to strategize what to do next. In the gathering of the petitions, Mrs. Campbell and Mrs. Navaji sailed to Hilo and held a meeting of the Huialohaina o Navahine, which men attended also. With them was a reporter from the San Francisco newspaper, the San Francisco Call. Her name was Miss Miriam Michelson. She attended the meeting in Hilo, and she later wrote her article about that meeting on September 22nd, 1897, on the deck of the passenger ship Australia on her way home to San Francisco.
On the island of Hawaii. It was a small, crude place, enough for 300 people, I believe. Bare rafters could be seen overhead, and the bare walls were improved with some biblical teachings written in English and Hawaiian. Don't boast about yourself for tomorrow. Without Christ, there is no salvation. As I entered, the bell of the foreign church, standing atop a beautiful bluff of Hilo, rang 10 times. This place is filled with Hawaiian people, and outside a crowd of people who could not come inside were standing patiently. This was a meeting conducted by the women. Nevertheless, several groups of men had come there. The women wore Mother Hubbard dresses of calico or cloth and wore white and black sailor hats. The men were dressed in coats and pants made like those of the Americans. Then the multitude of people separated, and 2 tall women entered who were dressed in black clothing. They had black kid gloves with black hats that were decorated with black feathers. The slightly shorter of the 2 had the noble and dignified demeanor of a queen. Red roses encircled the top of her hat, and lying upon her neck and breast was a lei expertly made from some flowers which were interwoven with palapalai ferns. She was Mrs. Waihelani Campbell, the president of Hui Hawaii Aloha, Aina or Navahina. Her companion was the secretary of the group branch in Hilo, Mrs. Emma Navahi. After the excited crowd quieted down, the minister of the Hawaiian church stood up. He was a tall man, majestic, handsome-faced, 3/4 haole, as they say here. His hands were gripped tightly in front of him, and he looked down upon the heads bowed before him and gave a few short words of prayer for the opening.
E kaku ko mako makualan. Pamea kikia manaloa, keli o nali, kaku o na kahaku o nali, kamea nana kilo himaluna o kia awa pau, mai kou noa li mai. Keno noi akini mako ya oe me kana awala nia. E nana mai I ko mako mo I wahine ori I ukalani. E ho pia I ai.
There is something impressive in strong prayers spoken in an unfamiliar language. You do not hear words, but tones. He was appealing with his feelings, not his reason. And then the voice of the minister ended. I watched Mrs. Navahi with curiosity when she stood and spoke to the people. I had never heard two women speak to the multitudes like this. Would this Hawaiian woman be embarrassed, timid, or self-conscious? None of these things. Her candid manner was like Charlotte Perkins Destin's 2 years ago, the most interesting speaker of the Women's Congress. The thoughts of the Hawaiian woman were of her subject, not of herself. There was something pleasing in her manner of speaking which compelled me to look at her, while the person who translated for me by my side whispered her translation to me all the while the words were being spoken.
We are a weak nation of people, we have no power unless we are united. America, we are not the United States of America is an independent land, and the people there are friends. They are friends indeed of the weak nations. We will show them. We will make them understand that just as they love their land and would endure suffering before giving it up, so do we love our land. And we pray that they do not take it from us. The voice of the people is the voice of God. Here is our hope standing shoulder to shoulder, heart to heart. The voice of the people is the voice of God. Surely the country on that side of the ocean hears our call to home. By joining our voices to cry for help, they will know. Makia palapala kakao inoa ana mai I keia la. Upon this petition of ours that we are submitting for signatures today, o oi e kawahine o Hawaii, ua loa ia oi he wā in no ai. You, the women of Hawaii, have a chance to express your thoughts. O ka palapala o nā kani, e houna ia mai ana noia, e ka hui o nā kani, tua e kaua I kakao I noa hui. The men's petition will be sent on by the men's group as soon as the signing of the names by the men in Honolulu is complete. Aole ke ia he maohale. Aole hoki he pokuri I mā kōkako alahele o kahani. O ke ia wale no kako alahele e hakakai. These are not underhanded actions, nor is our course of action deceitful. This is our only way of E ike nā mea apau a e ho mapopo I kakako palapala e ho. Everyone may see and know of our petition. O ke ia aina no kako, oia ko kako Hawaii. This land is ours. Kea. E honere ia ne ko kako launi. Shall we be deprived of our nationality? E ho hui ia me kako me America. Shall we be annexed to America?
At this time, the presiding officer introduced a woman, Mrs. Campbell, to the people. She spoke with pleasant smiles, and the men and women stamped in approval and cheered. She spoke only a few words filled with hope. Sometimes she spoke as if she were persuading them all to trust her, with sincerity and gentleness of voice, as she leaned forward and said,
E kupa, e kumauholoha. Stand firm, my friend. O ke aloha I ka aina ka mea nui ia. Ia oe a mea u. Mamua o nā mea apau. Love of the land is more important to you and me than anything else. E koa. E ikaika. E vivo ole me ka ho'omanawanui. Be brave. Be strong. Be fearless and steadfast. Our time will come. E hiki mai ana ko kākoa e kaka inoa ai I keia mea palapala ho'i. Sign this petition with your names. Nā po e aloha ia Hawaii, you people who love Hawaii. E hia rā. E hia rā e kaka inoa ai.
Her gloved hands as she spoke, and immediately hundreds of waving hands were turned to her, dark hands with short fingers and worn fingernails. They showed of poverty and work, of contact with the land they claimed.
He mea kakau nukeka e nei, e olelo I aia I ko o ko manao, a leila, I ke mai na Amerika, a leila, malia o ologe mai lako.
What is it? What did she say? I asked the translator.
Here is a writer from the newspaper, she says. She says to the people, tell her your feelings, then America will know and perhaps they will listen.
And at this time, something amazing happened. The men and women all stood up, one by one, and spoke a few words of faith.
This is my opinion. I love my land. I want independence. Louder, boy.
I love this land. I do not want to be annexed. How would the Americans like it if another bigger country came to annex them?
I am very strongly opposed to annexation. How dare the Americans rob of people's independence? America helped to overthrow the LEI, and she must be restored. We will never consent to annexation. I have an American father and a pure Hawaiian mother. It is the land of my mother that I love. America has performed an unjust act. How could we love America?
Let them see their wrongdoings and restore the Queen. If the great nations were fair, they would not take our land. I will never consent to annexation.
I say to America, I oppose annexation.
That speaker, she is a good woman. She is a Christian, an honest person, kind and charitable.
As for me and my family, we oppose annexation.
I am Kauhi. We have 300 people in our organization. We all fervently oppose annexation.
I love my land and oppose annexation. We look to America as a friend. Let us not make it our enemy.
I'm telling you the truth. The majority of people on Molokai completely oppose annexation. They are fearful that if annexed to America, their lands will be lost. The foreigners will gather the benefits, and Hawaiians will enter into a crisis more severe than even today's.
I am a mail carrier. Come with me to my district. Come with me and I'll show you 2,000 Hawaiians who are opposed to annexation. I am standing. Let's all stand up and show our love for our land, for our Hawaiian flag, not the American flag.
E maliu mai no ia